I'm Jason Lemkin from SaaStr.
And I'm Akira Kurabayashi from DNX Ventures. And so my first question is why you created this event and what is the motivation behind influence global SaaS entrepreneurs?
I was a CEO before of a SaaS company that's now Adobe Sign. It was called EchoSign. And I was of a cohort of CEOs like the CEOs of Box, the CEO of Dropbox, CEO of Aptus, a few others. And for better or worse, I sold my company in 2011, just as we were coming out of sort of the financial crisis. And I was the first one that had sold it for 9 figures for a gain. And so I was the first one that didn't have to pretend. No one had IPO'd yet, none of these IPOs had happened. So I just shared all my mistakes. And I just did it for myself.
Okay.
And I sat in my corner office at Adobe, my senior vice president's office, and I wrote 100 blog posts just for myself, how I screwed up my VP of sales, how I had to learn how to get leads for marketing, how I had to figure out pricing. And they said I couldn't publish them as a vice president, so I waited. But the day I left, I just started blogging. And I thought like 3 people would read it. But fast forward a few years, we have almost 100 million views, 110,000 downloads a week on our podcast. And so it turned out like all founders go through the same journey, don't they?
Yeah, yep.
It's at least for a given price point. Every $10,000 a product, every 100,000, every million, they sort of, after the early days, they sort of scaled the same way. And I realized that my lessons and Aaron Levine's lessons and everyone else's lessons, they could help everyone else. And it sounds obvious today. Yeah. But in 2012, like that changed people's lives. They'd never read this kind of content. And then in 2014, we did our first meetup. It was just a meetup. It had no speakers, no content.
Wow.
And 800 people came in 1 week.
Oh, great.
So I'm like, that's a lot.
Yeah. SaaS market is expanding a lot. Unicorn is also creating outside of the US as well. So how do you see the SaaS market expansion as well as entrepreneurs creation outside of the US and within the US? So.
I don't know all the answers. I'll tell you what I do know is Gartner just said that the market for SaaS for next year, the global market, will be about $180 billion. And 30% of that is outside of the US. Almost 60 billion of SaaS revenue is outside of the US. India is the most interesting example because 4 or 5 years ago, most India SaaS sold into India. And now all the top India unicorns are becoming global behemoths across the world. So I haven't seen that happen in Japan yet. I mean, in our little office here, we're not buying 10 applications from Japanese SaaS companies, but maybe next year, right? You tell me. I don't think that means the US will shrink because that 180 billion is growing 20% a year. So what will that be in 5 years? It'll be like $500 billion in SaaS. There's room for everyone to be huge.
Zoom and Twilio and Slack, those are the good example. We hope in near future, Japanese companies also chasing the same growth. One unicorn actually exists. Sansan is a Japanese first unicorn from SaaS market. They went public and now 1.5 billion market cap. They are providing business card management.
Yes.
In the US, nobody care about the business card, right? But in Japan, still people always exchange business card and are taking care of the business card pretty cautiously. So that's why Sansan is created, and that kind of local demand-based SaaS application could be the unicorn because they can expand not to the US, but go west. In Japan, similar to US, sales and marketing market is expanded. So Salesforce Japan helped a lot.
Yeah.
And Marketo enter into the market and competing each other. That's why, and the Japanese startup also, competing with US sales and marketing application.
If I'm a US company, SaaS company, or European, and I want to expand in Japan, besides going to Byte and localizing, what are the top 3 tips? What should I know expanding to Japan?
What US company need to aware is that landscape is totally different. In US customer size, there is a bunch of engineers and CMO motivation to implement the advanced SaaS technology into the organization, then compete with among the competitors. But in Japan, 70% of engineering resources belong to the IT company. They don't have enough resources to implement SaaS applications.
They outsource more, you mean? They outsource more?
Yeah. Some company like Box, they are relying on 100% on the partner sales, and then let those big integrator sell the box. So they don't have a direct sales resources. So it's a unique case for Japanese entry. But on the other hand, Salesforce Japan build a strong sales machine. Both way works, but company need to aware that environment is totally different. Customer readiness for the SaaS application, especially coming from US, is very high. So customers wanna implement and try US advanced technology.
When you look at like RPA, UiPath, 8 billion, Automation Anywhere just raised from Salesforce at 7 billion. The funny thing is, they're automating old software. They make really old software interact better with newer software. I know everyone wants to talk about the new thing like artificial intelligence and machine learning, but I see we're just starting for some categories to become cloudified. Like in the US, like call center. Call center is the second largest category of software. Call and contact. Like it's just becoming cloudified now.
So legacy business, but the
it's even slow, right? And then there'll be older categories that now they're going to be remade. There's going to be a second generation, right? And so I did an analysis on SaaStr of all the public cloud companies. What percent are in new versus old categories? 70% are just old categories that are just we're doing again. Like, I mean, we love Zoom, right? But is Zoom a new category?
Yep.
I mean, not remotely. It's just better.
In the US, industry-focused cloud is emerging. Same thing happening in Japan, especially for those specific industries like construction, healthcare, education. Japanese companies so outdated. They don't get the benefit of advanced IT. So some of the younger, motivated entrepreneurs taking on those markets. In Japan, one of our portfolio companies, a company called Oct, is the construction management SaaS application. And we are proud of that company because their growth rate and the growth efficiency at the ARR 5 million USD stage. The number is higher than Twilio and the Service Titan. So that's sort of amazing company.
It is amazing.
Cloud computing market already 20 billion USD in Japan. So it's huge, I guess. So that's why a bunch of global SaaS company may enter into Japanese market. Like we already have Salesforce, Marketo, Box, Slack, and recently WalkMe having office in Japan. Interestingly, those Japan country managers all Salesforce graduate. But Salesforce is
surprising.
Surprising because they are the front runner. US giant coming to Japanese market and the Japanese young entrepreneur trying to compete with them head to head. So that is what's happening, and both companies making better solution because they are competing with each other.
Absolutely,
and creating customer. And so I want to talk about those stuff at SaaStr coming March. And explain about tips to enter into Japanese market, how to find local needs and expand. And also public market is totally different. In Japan, in US, revenue growth is really important to affect the revenue multiple. But in Japan, margin is really important. So how Japanese entrepreneur look at how to generate a profit, or how they have to focus on growth, that is a discussion point. Are you interested in investing in those Japanese SaaS entrepreneurs or companies? Or if not, what is your concern?
I've invested in companies from 12 different countries, entrepreneurs from all across the world. But where I have been less successful is if the CEO isn't here part-time. Not all the time. I don't need the whole company here. But I have a couple superpowers. One of mine is recruiting. I can give you a VP of sales, a VP of marketing, a VP of customer success. But if you're not here part-time, it's hard for me to find that person in Japan. If you're Japanese and your customers are here, if they're Twilio, if they're Salesforce, if they're Tech, if they're Google, if they're Adobe, I can help. All right, well, this was great. Thanks for coming here.
So
we'll see you at SaaStr Annual in March. And we'll talk about the do's and don'ts of Japan's SaaS market, a decade of learning.
Thank you.
All right, thanks everybody.